did some work on this offline after thinking about it a couple more steps. Um, so the solution I had at the very end of the last recording was it was this thing right here. And what I thought to do that would speed up might be one is the fact that when you create the best workers, so like a tuple in a list that would then be turned into a heap, like right here. Obviously, tuples are a little slower than just a heap of or an array of integers. And instead of having true false as the differentiator between whether or not a value is a pilled worker versus an unpilled worker, what I did to maybe make it a little shorter um, was this technique. I'm not sure if you can even call this a technique, but it's a I'd probably more call it a hack. So I made values that were either odd or even to differentiate between whether or not it's pilled or unpilled. So by default, I said I made all my workers to be twice as much if they were unpilled. So best workers became 2 times worker index, where index is same thing as before. And then so there's no more tuple for that. There's no more false true for pilled versus unpilled. But if it's an even number, then it's they are unpilled, and if it's an odd number, then they're pilled. So the condition to check whether or not it's pilled is basically based on the remainder, right? Even versus odd. And so yeah, that changed. And then obviously the code that looks at the best worker and uses the tuple, I changed that to use basically just the value as odd or even. And when I push onto the stack a worker that's been pilled, I push onto the stack the worker plus 2 times the strength plus 1. And again, I check for even odd to determine pilledness. Now that didn't really increase the speed all that much. So the second thing that I thought about was like, why is it slowing down? Or what sort of redundant calculations are being done? And the one thing that I came up with is on a given set of tasks and set of workers, the calculations for whether or not the lowest task can be done is always the same in terms of it's being recalculated each time. And one way to not do that same calculation each time is I had a trivial set of tasks where if you had the smallest number of workers or the smallest tasks and the weakest workers, whatever number of tasks can be assigned to the weakest workers without using any pills, that should always be true, and that number should be your lower bound for your answer. So now that I think about it, maybe I don't even need this calculation here. Actually, let me try one thing here. So you sort your tasks, you sort your workers, you say there's some trivial amount, and then while the upper amount is going to be the minimum number of workers or tasks. Actually, I think maybe trivial is equivalent to my low bound. Yeah, I think this should just be my trivial amount. I actually cut down the number of workers and tasks based on the trivial amount, but I think this should just be the low bound. Maybe even the low bound plus 1. Ah. Oh, I know what I did. Did low plus trivial at the end here. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Pretty equivalent, I think. But a lot of the optimizations for binary search can often come in your setting for your bounds, your high bound, your low bound. So the low bound is excludes, or you can not choose to recalculate all the times where you know your task can be already done on the easiest tasks. And your upper bound is your upper bound, which is your minimum of your tasks or number of workers. Yeah, and then that ends up being much faster than before. Yep, cool beans.